Well, hello. And to continue on with the two gates, and Christ told us to enter in at the narrow gate, not the wide gate. It doesn't take long if you start doing a little research on the early years of Christianity before you bump up with the term gnostic. And of course, you'll probably almost immediately read that the Orthodox Church, the majority view church, has decided that the Gnostics were heretics. Back in 1945, there were a couple of men that, as the story goes, were looking for fertilizer, and they found scrolls, which are now, you can get copies of the Nag Hammadi library. You can also, if you can't afford the book, just simply go online. Most of the writings are there. This tells you an entirely different view of what the Christian message was about. Much more to it than what you're told daily on the TV, on the radio, and online here, that Jesus, the Son of God, that God came down into a human being, and then he went to the cross, got nailed to a cross. Totally barbaric story that we can all be saved and go to heaven if we will just believe the fact that Jesus died for our sins on the cross and claim that blood of Christ. And then we can go out and do whatever we want. Doesn't matter. We shouldn't go do whatever we want, but if we do, we're still saved. Well, that is total rubbish. It doesn't even agree with what the Gospels tell us that Jesus said. So he talks about the wide gate and the narrow gate. And the wide gate, the Orthodox view, leads to destruction. Leads to destruction. There's a way that seemeth right to man, but the end thereof is, again, destruction. There are many places in the Bible where we can read that Christianity was a mystery religion. We read about Jesus teaching in parables and how he told the disciples that he taught in parables so that the masses out there, those that were not capable of understanding the message, wouldn't get bogged down in it and reject the message. In other words, there was an outer message, which is the story that Orthodox Christianity tells you is the total story, just to literally interpret the Bible and stop there, go no further. And it's such a joke because you see church leaders on TV talking about the importance of spiritual growth in the church and of your personal spiritual growth, but yet they deny the power of the Word. They go right back and just talk about the literal story. I often turn on the radio at night when I go to bed, because I like the radio program of Coast to Coast. It's an AM talk show that goes for 4 hours, and generally around 10 o'clock at night, they repeat the last 3 hours. Usually there's just news and a little chit-chat and whatnot, and on the second hour they usually have a guest that stays for the 3 hours, and they last hour, people can call in and make comments and ask questions, and on a myriad of subjects. Sometimes the Bible, sometimes it's UFOs. It might be medical stories, politics, finances, but fairly interesting show. So I usually listen to that a bit before I go to sleep at night. Well, I woke up around 3, 4 o'clock the other morning to listen to the guest tell of a story about how he was driving a car and he was suffering a demonic attack. He was being choked by demons, and all he could say is, "The blood of Christ, the blood of Christ," out loud. How you say the blood of Christ out loud while you're choking is beyond me, but he claims that he did that. The blood of Christ, the blood of Christ. And finally, the demons let him go. I mean, foolishness. And it goes back to the literal story that without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sins. And all we have to do is believe that Jesus died on the cross for us. I found it very interesting the other day. I was looking at some material that I had studied years ago, and I came across a very famous sermon of Jonathan Edwards preached way back, I believe it was 1741, 1742, somewhere around that range, in Enfield, Connecticut. Jonathan Edwards was the pastor of a congregational church in Northampton, Massachusetts, and he had preached this sermon to his people up there, and he got no reaction at all. Well, on this second time, he was in Enfield, Connecticut, and there's a little stone marker there right on the side of Route 5 in Enfield, Connecticut that tells you the exact date that Jonathan Edwards was there, and he preached this message, "Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God." And there was people crying out and weeping and swooning and convulsions. And this was the beginning of what was called the Great Awakening in the United States here, and a great movement, and everyone started getting back to the Bible. Well, I was looking at that the other day and realized, if you read it, he mentions the word Christ 10 times. But the word that we're told, that only name that we can be saved by, Jesus, he never mentioned once. Not once did Jonathan Edwards use the name Jesus. In the book of Hebrews, we read, "For when the time ye ought to be teachers, you have need for one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of God, and are become such as have need of milk, and not of strong meat. Every one that useth milk is unskillful in the word of righteousness, for he is a babe." You ought to be teachers, but you still on the milk. You're still stuck on the outer message of the word and have no understanding of the underlying truths. Christianity was a mystery religion, and the real meaning of what the Bible was trying to convey was taught to initiates only.